everyone, and welcome to the SimPub, the third episode of our new podcast, mainly about rFactor 2 today. So, specifically talking about the brand new rFactor 2 competition system, which is still in beta condition, but mainly being rolled out to the rFactor 2 simulation as a core feature of the simulation beside its new UI. And secondly, we're going to talk about the new FSR 2021 season, what to expect, what facts do we know. And actually, since we have Cameron Rodger here, co-host of the SimPub and FSR president, we're talking to the man in charge and to the man that can answer all our questions. Hello, Cameron. Good evening to you, buddy.
Hello, good evening as well. Welcome to all the viewers. And yeah, this is one I'm really excited for this one. To be honest, obviously being FSR president, we're gonna talk about well, some things have been announced, maybe some things that haven't been announced just yet, and what's happening with FSR, but also with the rFactor 2 competition system, which seems to have picked up pretty well so far. So yeah, it's going to be a good, nice episode.
I believe so too. And first off, we start with the rFactor 2 competition system that has just been released on Christmas Eve for the public. We know it's still in beta. We heard it had issues, like the guys that follow the streams I did in the last couple of 2 weeks. They know pretty much that there are known issues and stuff that's needed to be worked on. But first of all, I mean, finally having an rFactor 2 competition system out there, and we're going to explain how this works. We're going to explain what's currently on it for those that have not yet had a touch with it. But in general, I feel this could be a big game changer for rFactor 2. I was quite surprised as I heard they're going to release a competition system. I mean, I knew about the Ligier, I knew about the DPI and the new Corvette GTE, but the competition system, that was my actual Christmas present, if you want to see it like this. What do you think about that?
Well, they've been teasing it for, well, years, literally.
Yes.
And we all thought it just was never going to come. And they always said, oh, yeah, the beta's coming, you're going to get ready for it and all this sort of stuff. But finally, as a Christmas present to everyone, they did release it. And so far, seems to be getting some pretty good use. And for instance, like the views on the videos you've made of it have done really well. So there's obviously loads of interest in it. And obviously, every time I jump on it, and watch what you're doing, there's always loads of the top names on there as well who often race in the high level competitions, so it seems to have got off to a pretty good start.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, I mentioned it already, it is still in beta condition, and I keep repeating myself, we A, need to be patient, we B, need to give feedback, and C, canalize that all in the forums of rFactor 2. I know this is a sort of a hot topic. Like, I go in that forum and I just want to add something, but first need to proofread whether it's not like been mentioned 15 times before in other threads. But I think, and that is what really everyone needs to understand right now, with this still being beta, rFactor 2 and Studio 397, they are looking for data, they are looking to improve the system, and I think we should also have a look today on how this rFactor competition system works. And maybe get into the discussion, what was the positive things about it, what was the negative things about it, what can we expect from it in the future maybe. As I can tell you guys exclusively that I've spoken to Marcel Offermans, even tonight there will be a new blog post out on the Studio 397 webpage, specifically about the competition system and its development. So there are a few questions that have arose over the past 2 weeks, speaking about, is there a rating, will there be a rating, how are the positions being based, and how is the stuff being calculated between each other. We're going to look a little deeper into that, because I have talking to Marcel like 10 days ago, so I kind of know how it works, but it takes a little bit, explanation. Doing that side by side with driving is a bit of a difficult one. So when speaking about pictures, and we're going to bring up the competition system live here on the SimPub in a couple of minutes, maybe things get cleared up a little bit.
Yeah, indeed. It is going to be one of those more complicated systems. There's so many different ways that you can do it, or so many different settings to how you can work out, splits and eventually when they get released, the ratings and things like that. So it is going to take a little bit of time, and that's why as we say, it is in beta, and there's just some there's two series at the moment. Obviously, there's the Tatus, the sort of Formula 3 type car series, as well as the GTE one as well. And obviously, they only go for another couple of weeks as they're just sort of rolling into it. And I'm sure as these things go out and they get more races and they get more data with how it works, it's going to get so much better. And it is one of those things where, yes, it's taken a long time, and maybe some people have lost a little bit of faith in the studio because it has taken so long. But as we know, with rFactor 2, it's not, the biggest sort of pool of drivers. It's not the biggest pool of developers. So these things do take a bit longer. But I'm considering how good it seems to be so far, I'm actually pretty excited to see where this is going to go, because I think they've got off to a really good start. And yeah, maybe a little bit awkward in some cases. For the most part, we're still getting some racing, and that's really what matters at the moment.
I very much agree with this, and what you said is quite interesting. Like you said, maybe some people have lost the trust and lost the belief into Studio 397 of fixing things, because usually, and we need to be quite honest with this, usually when there is an issue on the game, on the car, or whatever, it takes them quite some while to fix it. But what you need to say, despite all holidays, I know that Marcel Offermans was like online and coding pretty much all Christmas. We had this issue with people not getting the commands for the join of the client. So, as a client, you log into the race, then the server tells you, okay, you are now joining that split server, and you get login details, and the system logs you automatically in, and you join. And that outgive of commands, I want to say, that was delayed for whatever reason in the code, and it took them like, I think, 24 hours to fix it. And whatever major issue came up that prevented people from racing or made them run into errors, they fixed it pretty much within 24 hours, and that is pretty impressive, I've got to say.
Yeah,
for their size and everything.
And that's pretty much what they've got to do at the moment. They just need to keep getting the races out, because by getting people to race, by getting them to use the system, that's where you're going to find all of the little bugs. And yes, the report pages on the forum where people have sent in their bug reports is stacked at the moment, but that's a good thing. Yes, maybe not all of them will be seen or be seen quickly. At least they're there, and the studio will be able to go through them all. And having spoken to a number of people who work there over the last couple of years that we've been a bit closer with them, they care so much about the game and about the users' experience of the game. They obviously just need, time and resources to be able to do that. And considering how good this is now, I can only see it getting even better from here. But obviously, it's probably one of those things. We're probably going to have to wait a couple of months. But considering they're getting these races out, they're getting all the data, they're seeing how the user experience is and how the feedback is from that. It's just going to, keep on getting better and better, I expect.
Very true. So let's head into the system and have a look about the competition system itself. So maybe I'm one step too much ahead already. So what you basically have to do is you join your rFactor 2. Yes, the new UI is enforced, and then you either scroll to the right where you find the competition, or you click on the top on race. I mean, it doesn't make big difference. Can go on the customize button when you join multiplayer, single player, or the competition side, and that gets you to that picture. This is the overall overview of the competition system, personalized on you, as it says at the top, my competition. So since there are only 2 competitions and I'm signed up for both of them, it is identical with all competitions. So imagine I would not be subscribed to either of those 2. I would only see the relevant sessions for me right here on the list. That is the next 4 always that's been forecasted. And if I'd be keen on racing another race or racing another competition, I could click on all competitions to see where are the other spots of the available competitions. Hence why this is called a summary, all available competitions to be found at the bottom down here. That is the overall competition system as of right now. Now you guys will be okay, and how do I see what is going on in that competition system? That is when we go a little deeper into this. Cameron, as soon as you want to add something, you just go for it. But
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously at this stage, at the bottom, you obviously basically choose which one you want, and I'm sure as this improves, there will be many competitions to choose for. But at the moment, we've got GTE or Tatus Formula 3 car. So then you'd obviously select one of those, and then it gives you, unfortunately we can't show you because we've already signed up, but it gives you a screen where you basically choose the car, the specific car that you're going to use for that series.
I'll just go back a step real quick, because what it does, I'm gonna approach it that way. Let's pretend we're gonna sign up for the GTE Winter Series. I'm already signed up, but usually where it says more info right here, there is also the sign up button. Once you click that button, the game automatically checks whether you do have all content that you need in order to be subscribed. And yes, it does not be enough to just have one GTE car and the tracks, or one track, or whatever. For being eligible to race and participate in the series, you need to have all available GTEs and all available tracks that are being used in this series. So for the GTE Winter Series, that are Corvette C7 and C8, the Aston Martin, the Ferrari 488 GTE, the Porsche 911 RSR GTE, and the BMW M8 GTE. You need to own all these cars, and you need to own all these tracks, which is Imola, Sebring, Virginia, Nürburgring, and Silverstone.
Yeah. So this is a little bit of this is where it's obviously not the most fluid for some users, because some people just coming into it maybe won't have all of the content. And yes, it's not ideal, but I think rFactor have said this a number of times, that this is just the way the game is, that you have to have all of the content for that season or that server. So if you are going to be doing rFactor 2 long term, then you might as well get all of the DLC anyway. A lot of these items are in various packs to actually get a bit of a discount than buying them individually as well. So do go check that out on the Steam store. But yeah, so it's not the most easiest thing in the world, and sometimes it can be a bit funny if you race in other series that uses an upgrade of the standard car. You will have to temporarily remove them to allow this sign up to happen as well. So there are a couple of little things that you need to think about, but again, once you sort of get used to these things, it does make a little bit of sense, and over time I'm sure it is going to become a little bit more fluid. But don't get too frustrated if you click on it and it comes up like the error straight away. There are ways of getting around that.
Absolutely, and I'm going to quickly find a way to get around this the next time Cameron is taking over. But for now, all you need to know, because the system will ask you in what kind of configuration you want to join in the series. As for the GTEs, you can click on them in the race button, or in the race area where you do single player racing, and then click customize, and then you get into the showroom where all the upgrades that are selectable can be found. For the tattoos, that is a transparent halo by 10%, and for the GTE, that used to be the positions templates and the Le Mans or the standard aero package.
Yeah, that's quite an important one as well, because once you've signed up and you've selected your livery and you've selected your upgrades, you're locked into those. So it's quite important to make sure you don't rush that step and you select the correct one.
This is very, very right and very, very true. I'm quickly gonna go on. So it seems like rFactor 2, yeah, nice. On my old PC, rFactor 2 is just way too strong. But here we are. So Usually, by customize, there would be the possibility to change between the Le Mans aero package and the standard aero package. Yet I do have confirmation from Marcel Offermans, just got that 15 minutes ago. And that is also the reason why today were no races whatsoever, because Wednesday's update day here on rFactor 2 with the competition system, they have now removed the aero packages, so only the standard aero package is now being enforced, and that will equal the chances of everyone driving. I was mourning about that too, because since there was no Le Mans on the calendar, I obviously signed up with the standard aero package, but this in hindsight has been an issue, or has been an disadvantage in the first place. So they fixed this now, right today, and from now on, which will be up after tomorrow, Virginia is on, that will be the place to race.
Yeah, it's again, that's one of those things that they only find out these, well, I say little, but these sort of more smaller details. You only really find that out when you put this out to the mass market, and you realize that some people might get that wrong, and it's obviously quite a big issue if you get something like that wrong. So it's good to see that they're fixing that already.
Exactly. And for those of you, if you might click on sign up and you're missing something, or say mod could not be installed, or in general if you do have an issue where it says mod could not be installed, something, and that's a top tip for, that is pretty much unrelated from the competition system itself, but if you go into your directory, so Steam, Steam Apps, Common, rFactor 2, and then go bin32, you find a small program called Mod Manager. I'm gonna fire that up real quick, and I'm already sorry if it cannot be seen crystal clear right now on the screen, but if you go to at the top, you can select between mods and components. Components are locations, so tracks, vehicles, other plugins, but we're looking at mods because that is what you need to have, and it shows you what you need in order to run a mod. So we are looking for the GTE Winter Series, and here you see for the GTE Winter Series you select this, and everything there at the bottom, what it says there, is required for you to have it installed, so you can check what are you missing, and you can check what you still need. And as you can see, the 1.2 version of this GTE has new version numbers of, let's say, the Porsche 991 RSR. It used to be the version 247 required, now it's 255 with the removed packages, or removed aero packages. So that is a good way for you to check what you actually need for the racing.
And that is very important. The version number is very important, because obviously if you have an older one, or you have a different version from a different league that has used that car and made a little upgrade and that sort of stuff, the game is a little bit finicky with those sorts of things. So do double check that you don't have other versions of the track from other leagues or whatever. That is very important, otherwise it won't be able to install. But as Michi has shown on this mod manager page, that's a very good way of being able to see specifically what is required. But there's also the packages directory within the game as well, although you can't see this little list of what is required. So there's a couple of different ways that you can troubleshoot yourself.
Exactly, that should just be one quick way to show how to do it, maybe. So coming back to the actual competition system, so now that you got all the tracks, now that you got all the cars, and you signed up your car with whatever you want to race, whether that's Aston Martin or Corvette, pick it, but make sure you can't change it again until the series is over. Then you find the schedule sessions. Obviously there's a qualifying, obviously there's a race. So for the GTE Winter Series, we do have a 15-minute qualifying and a 45-minute race. And this runs in the following way. You have 2 qualifyings a day and 5 races a day. Now you will be like, so, okay, what about those 3 races without qualifying? this is a pretty interesting way of qualifying for an event. Each event is 3 days long. On every day you have 2 qualifyings, and this qualifying result is A, dynamic, B, permanent, and C, valid for all races. Which means if you do a qualifying, let's say you do the first qualifying tomorrow, which will be for the GTE Winter Series, 10:45 a.m. And you put a massive lap in and you put yourself on pole, which you can see in the standings qualifying. There is for the active event, there's a full lap time sheet. Let's say if you put in, we pretend Sebring has just started, you put in a 156. Fine, you've put in a 156, and this 156 is always valid for every race that happens at Sebring. So it needs to be quite sure that you guys understand when you do a qualifying lap, let's say a 158.6. Right now Kasper Stolze is sitting in 8th at Sebring, and you put in 158.650, so you put yourself in 8th. This means when there is a new race coming up and Capet is taking part, Arisi is taking part, and Polesny is taking part, and then you start in 4th position. And whoever takes part in that race, the game is going to fetch the qualifying, put the top 20 of participant drivers into a split, then do another split with the next 20, and so on until all registered people are being put into splits. That is how qualifying works. Also, if you do a qualifying session, have a lap time, do another qualifying session and improve that lap time, you get updated in the list. So this
it's quite an interesting way of doing it, and it removes the need to have a qualifying session for every single race, which I guess in many ways is quite good, but it also means you have to make sure that you are around for qualifying. Because obviously, if you don't set a qualifying lap, especially if you don't set a good qualifying lap, you're not going to be with the best drivers.
Yes, and some people consider this an issue. Like I see Nicolini just saying it's quite dumb to run a qualifying after 2 other races have already started. Well, yes, if you don't do a qualifying, you're still allowed to race, but you're going to be sit in a kind of bottom split or somewhere down, racing against other people that have neither qualified nor or qualified in dead last. So that's it about qualifying, pretty much. As I said, as long as the event is valid or active, so Sebring is active right now, you're going to see your lap times right here. As soon as the event is done, the lap time is going to be seen for Virginia, and your lap time is going to turn in the position you were in the end. So you see Polesny was second in the first run at Imola in qualifying, and now has been 5th, so he would get the 5. Ahmed was in 5th in Imola, and he would now get a 12 for the Sebring race. So that's pretty much how qualifying works. So again, this qualifying is active and valid for every of the 15 races in those 3 days. Remember, there's 5 races a day. And this qualifying file or this qualifying list is being valid for all races, and just gets yourself the position depending on how many people are racing, whom of the people are racing, whether they are ahead of you in the qualifying list, they start ahead of you. If they are behind of you in the qualifying list, they start behind of you, and so on. And that is how the qualifying session or the qualifying on the competition system works.
Yeah. So obviously it also depends on the amount of people who show up, and therefore which split everyone goes into as well. So yeah, it is actually quite an interesting way, because you could sort of play it a little bit, but then obviously eventually when the rating system comes in, you will be getting more points for beating better drivers. So sandbagging to be in a lower split so you can win it won't necessarily be the best way of doing it. But yeah, something to think about, and also keep up with, that there is only those 2 qualifyings a day.
This is very true, and as you were just speaking about the fact with the splits and everything, and how you're going to be put into the ranking itself, this is a bit more tricky to explain. Reason for this is, on the one hand, I'm no Studio 397 official, so I do not know exactly how this has been put together, but I can kinda explain how it's somewhat works. So this may be a bit confusing now, but I'm just gonna try it. What this rating basically does is it gives you points according on your performance in an event. So Sebring is an event and Imola is an event. The first guy, so Timotej Andonovsky, or the guy that is beaten in P1 gets awarded 500 points at the end of the event. The guy that is in P250, can't see this here probably, really good, gets one single point in the end. So here you have Patrick Siller and Jeremy Deboulet. Those guys, so Deboulet currently in the Sebring event was 250th, and Patrick Siller has been 250th at Imola. This is not your rating. This is the points you get awarded for the championship according to your position. So Timotej got first twice in the event, therefore gets awarded 500 points. Arisi got fourth in Imola and second in Sebring, got 491 points for fourth and 497 points for first. Risto Capit, vice versa. So how does your position get calculated? This happens fairly easy. So the system always looks at the splits, and it pretends that the splits are non-dependent on each other, which means that each split is independent of each other. I'm sorry. So each split just ranks each driver within that split, but not across other splits. I can tell you why that is. So I have done 2 races at Sebring. In the first, I got second. In the other one, I won. Yet though, I'm being put into P12, getting 476 points. Sorry, no, the P12 is overall. The 476 points means I am P8. Yes, I am P8 overall at Sebring. So why not P2 or P1? Because I got first ones and I got second ones as well. So how the F am I got P1, P8? That is because I twice raced in the lowest splits. I did not race against Capit, I did not race against Andonovsky, I did not race against Barclay, and so on. Now, the system looks. Capit was beaten by Arisi, and Arisi has also beaten Barclay, but Barclay has beaten Capit. So, the system then sorts Arisi ahead of Barclay, ahead of Capit. And that is on a rating that is hidden behind the numbers that no one has really access to apart from rFactor 2 himself. So I think if we would have Marcel Overman right here, we could get him on a hot seat if asking the question how the F is your
well, yeah, maybe
rating.
That's the first guest that we get on the channel is Mr. Offermans.
Yeah, it would be a good call, definitely, but I think he's not ready yet to speak about the whole competition system working stuff. Anyway, that is how it works. So the system compares yourself, where you compete, against the drivers you compete at. And what will happen now if I have beaten Ruben, and Ruben would then have beaten, let's say, Arisi, Capit, and Barclay in another race where I would have not taken part. The system would then say, well, if that Hoyer guy beats Ruben and then Ruben beats the other one, then this Hoyer guy needs to be pretty good and goes up. That's what it does. It always looks at results within the split at first, that gets the first ranking, and then it looks at other results compared with other people that have beaten other people. So you know, it starts in a big hub, and that is obviously for a spectator's point of view, or also from a competitor's point of view, very, very difficult to go through, understand, and read from it.
Yeah, because the reason why it's a little bit more complicated than literally just the race results is because if you put people into splits of 20, as you say, if you win split 2, you are effectively 21st position. But because you're in a split, you can never physically go higher than that because obviously you've won the race.
Yeah.
So obviously then when there's 15 races over the course of the couple of days and it tries to work out, as you say, who's beating who, that is obviously quite an important factor, which is why getting into the higher splits is quite important, because once you start beating the higher drivers, it will start putting you up because, oh yeah, he can beat that driver. So it is quite interesting. And I would like to know sort of more exact details of that from the studio themselves. But obviously things like that, I assume, won't be fully released due to exploits and stuff like that that could always be used. But yeah, that is certainly it certainly needs to be a little bit more complicated, basically, because if you're always fixed into a certain position, then especially for the guys lower down, then that gives it's a little bit harder for them to work their way up. So yeah, but again, we'll see how it works. They're obviously effectively experimenting with this sort of stuff. They don't know if it's going to work. And right now, as you say, it's only sort of for the top 250. So once the numbers go up and there's way more than that, you know, hundreds and then probably going into the thousands taking part, that's when it's going to get even more complicated. So them just testing this at the moment is a good thing. But it seems to be it just seems to be working fairly well, and it does mean that obviously there's no benefit of being in a lower split, which is how it should be. You don't want people being in a lower split and just winning the races and benefiting from that, from racing against less people or less talented people.
Exactly. What I've done real quickly is I've went into the other competition, and if we just look at 3 people real quick, or actually 4. Well, there's probably examples for everything in every split. But let's look at Fabian Walter. He somehow has won the Silverstone event. I never raced against him, but all the races I did, which were a couple, I was either second or first. And yet, though, here at Lime Rock Park, he just got P243. So you see that is the big imbalance of the system, and I don't want to pinpoint about performances or skill level of any drivers. What I'm just saying is, look at the number. Also, Ruben Correa Alves. I have raced against him quite a bit lately, and he is one of the Studio 397 officials trying it, and you know, he's quite a bit off the pace of mine, but he somehow still managed to get into. This is a top 15 result. I think 450 points, P17, P18, something like that, and 431 points means top 30 as well. Yet in the other races, he never. I think that is not even a top 100 position twice. Well, that might be. I'm not sure about the 151. But anyway, the point I'm raising is. Sometimes you can really get very high points by winning and winning and winning and winning the lower splits if you do just enough races. Because what Studio 397 also has told me, it takes into consideration how much of the actual racing you do. Do you do one race in the lower split and win it? Or do you do 10 races in the lower split and win it? Then the system just references you as being pretty good driver. So that is what happened to me in the GTE series. Did 2 races, P2 and P1, and still got somehow into the top 10. Whereas the more often you race, and the more often you race in a top split, and you have a bad race, and you get P7, like I knew that Southerly, for him it happened. He got one utterly bad result in Lime Rock Park, and that get him to P12 or P13 for that event. despite he was top 2, top 3, top 4 in the top split all the time. So that is a bit of an issue.
It is obviously maybe not ideal, but it does also reward people showing up to all of the races, which is what they want. So obviously those little details will be balanced out, and they'll try and make it so you can't, as I said before, you can't exploit being in a lower tier. But those little details will only be found out when people do this, and when it comes up and there's some funny results. So I do expect little things like that to be tweaked, but for now it seems to be giving roughly a pretty decent result. Maybe not be perfect. Maybe there's the odd result that's a bit wacky, but there always will be with a system like this, because it always depends on who shows up, the quality of the people that show up, then also how many times you show up as well. Because there's no point coming into split 1 and winning it and then never racing again. You need to be continuing to improve yourself.
This is very true. So what I saw was Mr. Erhan Yajowski, our Mr. Esports of Esports in rFactor 2, quite undoubtedly. He did one race in Silverstone.
There he is. 150 something.
Exactly. He puts, you know, he's now been rated in P157 just because he did one freaking race. He won that freaking race, and still for Silverstone, just because it was only one race, only once in the top split, never raced again. He just tried his new wheel. He's been put in I don't know, that also needs to be P20 or P17. You know, and you question yourself why. A guy like Erhan Yajowski, best rFactor 2 driver in the world at the moment. I put this bold, this bold accusation out. Yeah. He does one race, he wins it, and isn't first. Like, what? But as we've spoken about, this is still a beta condition competition system, and here's a list of things that shall be implemented step by step. So what they did now is they started the beta version of the competition system, and they now will get slowly towards it. So they do have ratings in place. They are currently hidden though for them, for their algorithm just to process it. They had to have a look at the data. I remember myself complaining about some things in Event 2. Other people were complaining because they did not understand how they get into the specific places. And we then also spoke to, I spoke to Marcel and said, you know, we have a finding here, please have a look into it in the result files. And that is what's happening currently. And as soon as they do understand the ratings and they do understand the algorithms better, they're going to tweak it, they're going to improve it. The next feature that is about to come at some point is protests and decisions.
Yes.
I have made errors, quite likely that would have been penalized. Others have done errors, they would have been penalized. So
that's going to be quite interesting actually, because that's going to start changing the results and therefore the points quite a lot as well.
Very much so.
Especially as these things are fairly quick. You know, they're only a couple of days each track. Those protests, obviously the system's not active yet.
Yes.
But when that comes in, obviously the turnaround time of those could be quite interesting in working out your position in that series as well. But yeah, that's definitely something that's going to be needed. Nico in the chat has said about people basically cutting over chicanes to make overtakes and this sort of stuff. And from what it sounds like, they are going to ultimately use the in-game system in the future. And to me, what that sounds like is they're going to make that more sophisticated so it can work out illegal overtakes and this sort of thing, which I think is a very good thing just for the whole of rFactor 2 if that does happen. But obviously there are certain things at the moment that aren't detected. So it would be good to have protests, but then in some ways it's also a bad thing to have that as well, because you do hope that people just naturally race okay for these sorts of things. And obviously, in general, a certain position in this series doesn't really matter, especially at the moment. So hopefully it doesn't get to that point where there's literally hundreds and hundreds of protests coming in. So they do have to be careful with how they manage that. But yeah, it's certainly a good thing that is going to be coming in, I think. They just need to make sure they do it in the correct way, that it doesn't get exploited.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. I mean, we all probably gonna know who's going to be Mr. Race Control behind all that, our beloved Jimmy Ellison. And I mean, I gotta say, right now, if the penalty system or the protest system would be active, I think he would have had busy days already.
That's probably why it's not open straight away, as people get used to it.
I mean, I had one or other situation where I had to blame myself, and then, or secondarily, been so surprised by the way other people were driving, and I don't mean this in a bad way whatsoever. I could have probably expected, but this is another issue. You know, all the top of esports guys, or all the guys that are decent level and race high valued competitions such as GT Challenge, Top Split, GT Pro, FSR, VEC, and so on. They kind of have, you know, a quite high level expectations of the driver around them since ages. And so it happened to me the other day. Then I ran in the back of someone at Sebring and on approach to Sunset because, I don't know, proper punt. And that was so unintended. I tried to do a switchback nearly 150 meters before the actual braking point, or 100 meters before the actual braking point. I tried to make a switchback, but the guy ahead of me just got scared and started braking early, and I just punted him off. And I'm utterly so sorry, but you know, in a esports kind of environment, when you have the drivers around you that are on the same level, or on, you know, you trust them differently.
Yeah, that is quite a big factor, actually. I've seen this from a number of drivers that came into because obviously the track lasts for 3 days, and they come into the track on the second or third day, and naturally they're a little bit down on qualifying, and they're in lower splits and this sort of stuff. And I've seen a few videos being posted, like on Discord, and they're these drivers generally starting nearer the back of the grid because of, you know, not qualifying, but they have the ability to win the race by 10 seconds, but they still try and win the race on the first 2 laps, even though they know that they are with drivers who are of a worse standard. So I think the driver needs to take that into consideration as well, especially as this is effectively a public open lobby. You are going to get some new guys. You are going to get some guys who aren't used to it, who aren't used to that competitive environment where you pretty much have to send it every single time you get an opportunity. So that is quite important. And especially the guys who are a bit faster need to take that into consideration. Because especially the race, for a GTE race is 45 minutes long.
Yeah.
45 minutes is a long time. After 20 minutes, people will start crashing, and then you'll have 25 minutes of driving on your own. So you don't have to, you know, do everything at once in the first 2 laps. So yeah, hopefully drivers get used to that, especially if they get put in a lower split.
Yes. So I quickly finish off the points about features. What they're obviously going to bring in is more competition formats. They will run their GT Pro and their GT Challenge system, or a championship over the or via the competition system. They're going to add roles and team-based driving. That may be interesting for VEC, broadcast integration, and offline championships where you can race against AI. That is all features that are about to come, and I'm pretty sure that's just a few of many. I would be particularly interested to see how they are introducing championships. Cameron, I've got a special question for you when we're talking about FSR later on. But for now, I spotted 2 questions in the chat that I quickly want to answer. First one comes from Spaceman Spiff. Are rating points also going to influence in which split you will race, or only quali time? for right now, this is only the qualification time. And the second question, and I'm gonna come back to how the system works, is from James Racing. So he mentioned he did a couple of laps in qualifying, and then the session advanced to the race, and then he got thrown out the server. And he was like, is that an issue, or why isn't he allowed to race? That is because the system is designed like this. I'm going to explain this real quick. Let's take... Probably the tattoos makes more sense. Forget about this session at 2 a.m. If you do qualifying at 5:45 a.m., you're going to join this. You're going to join in the practice session. That goes 5 minutes 30. Then this advances to qualifying. You've got a 15-minute qualifying. As soon as this ends, drivers are allowed to finish their lap. And as soon as the last guy has pressed escape and is back into the garage, the game will advance into a 5-lap race, and that throws you out the server.
Yeah.
And that is how it is designed to work as of right now.
That's kind of just how the game works. I'm sure maybe as this goes on, things like that will be a little bit easier. But basically, once the session finishes, the server needs to advance to the next session so that the log file and therefore results are logged and generated. So the session can't just end and then that's it. It needs to go into the next session for it to do that. And then obviously there will be a command in there that closes the server or whatever, which is why it's kicking you out.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's nothing to be scared about. That's just how the game works at the moment.
Exactly.
Because when you set up a server, it's literally like practice quali race. That's just how the game is set up at the moment.
Exactly. And when you come out, when you get thrown off the server, you've been thrown back to the, to the summary page. What you can do then is put standings in a qualification, remember what lap time you did, and then find for your name. I don't have that is something that's missing as well. Search functionality.
Yeah, or like a highlight of your own name.
Yeah.
But again, things like that will, I'm sure,
exactly. So
come in.
I know then. Let's pretend you're not James. Let's pretend you're Alex Albuquerque. Then you find yourself in P91, and what you need to do afterwards then is go back to the schedule or to your sessions. Excuse me. And subscribe to the race at 7 a.m. This is where your qualifying result is then being processed in. So the qualifying you did 5:45 a.m. It's been saved. It's been put to the list. And depending on who is running with you, that is going to make up the split. So the top 20 of the drivers taking part out of that list is the first split. Then the next 20 and so on. And they will be used to set up the grid for the race in this 7 a.m. session.
Yeah, and there will be a countdown timer to that session.
Yes.
Just to the right of the
it would be right
the
here.
event.
And this timer starts an hour to go prior to the event, and you can register with 15 minutes to go prior to the event. And when is your next event can always be seen, or the next possible session can always be seen down there at the top. So for the Tattoos Winter Series, that is a little more than 4 hours. For the GTE Series, a little more than 6 hours.
Yep. So yeah, hopefully that pretty much rounds up the general use of the competition system.
Yes.
And as we said, it's going to be updated and sorted. And yes, those things probably will take another year to come, but that is just how these things are. But overall, I have to say I think it's a fairly decent start, and at least we're getting some racing. And there's already many updates coming, so don't be too worried or upset if there's a couple of issues at the moment.
Absolutely, and the more we go on with the competition system, the more features we get. And I consider it will be a feature. I do not have any confirmation on it yet. I'm not sure if you have confirmation and if you're able to talk about, but maybe, and I say really maybe, this system may be able to grab up big, currently run privately championships. such as FSR. We're going to talk about that later, but first let us talk about FSR. Formula Sim Racing starts into its next season, so the Formula Sim Racing 2021 season, and I think we look at the trailer first, do we? Mr. Cameron.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Right, so ladies and gentlemen, the introduction trailer for the Formula Sim Racing 2021 season.
Yeah, so there it is, the car and calendar reveal. So as you would have seen, we are using the new, although in real life it got delayed by a year, but the new generation style of Formula car that will be coming in 2022. But we will be using it this year as the basis for the car for Formula Sim Racing 2021. And here on the calendar, you can see we've got 12 races this season, so 2 more than last year. It's the same 10 tracks from 2020, but we have added in Le Mans and the new Spa DLC as well. So this kind of gets me really excited. I think it's a really high quality calendar, and it's going to put on a great show. So yeah, I'm really excited to get started, but it's still just over 2 months away, so still plenty of time for planning and sign up and preseason test races, mod development, rules, all that sort of stuff is to come, and we're going to discuss a bit of that now.
That is definitely great news. And before we get deeper into the FSR 2021 season plans, we got already a question up here from Mod Database. He questioned, was that model developed internally and will it be released on the Steam Workshop again?
Yes, so we got a small, well, I say small group, it's literally just a handful of people, really, within FSR who help out, but mainly the model itself was made by Matt Tewson, and then the physics will be made primarily by Robin Panzer, but we do have a little group of beta testers and a couple of other people giving Robin some advice as well. So yeah, we do look forward to a good car, which should be getting released soon. As part of the question, they did ask if it's released on the Steam Workshop. So yeah, that is the plan. That ultimately it will be, but obviously once the version 1 is released. At the moment, it's still in beta, and version 1 will probably get released after the liveries have been made for round 1, after the deadline for that, when it's released for the first race. That is probably when it'll be released on the workshop, but don't quote me on that. So yeah, hopefully everyone can drive it. And yeah, I mean, it looks really good. Obviously, it's a little bit funky with the new style front wing, the new style rear wing, and also the wheel covers, which will be optional. You don't have to use the wheel covers; they will be optional. There is a 18-inch rim underneath them. Yeah, so I think it's a really good job so far by Matt on the mod and Robin on the physics, and yeah, that should be released in the near future.
Speaking about new physics and speaking about it's been a 2022 regulation, as it got delayed by a year. Question for many people probably is, will DRS be removed compared to the other race?
Yes, so not only are we updating the physics from last year and changing the car model, we are obviously changing a little bit the philosophy of the racing. So we will be removing DRS, and do not panic because ultimately DRS generally brings back actually more boring races, and we feel we can develop the car in such a way that racing will be more than possible even without the use of DRS. Because one issue with DRS is if you're in a train of drivers, if you're like, especially if you're third, fourth, or fifth in the queue and you've all got DRS on each other, you literally can't do anything because the guy ahead of you has such an top speed advantage because they've got slipstream and DRS that counteracts what you've got. Also, the removing of DRS means teams will have to think about their wing angle a little bit more because obviously your only real use of defense is by lowering your wing angle to be faster on the straights. So that is going to be something to take into account as well. So yeah, that's to be honest, that's one of the most exciting parts for me, is seeing how the racing is going to be, because there were a couple of tracks last year where, also it is my fault a little bit with the lengths of the DRS zones as well. But we did have a couple of little boring races last year due to the DRS. So hopefully removing it, we can add something a little bit more special.
As you say, you want to make the racing less boring, therefore removing DRS. Do you have concrete plans or something confirmed yet, what you're going to use or what you're going to have as a workaround in order to make the races interesting and probably also strategically interesting?
Yeah, so there's so many ways that you can do this, but we're using what we know. So obviously we have 3 years now, 18, 19, 20, we used the same spec, the modern, high downforce, big ground effect, grippy tire philosophy of F1. But now that we've gone to this new model, it's given us the freedom to explore a little bit. So the plan is to bring back refueling, which scares some people, a lot of people, since that's been announced. But there are ways in which we will combat the different factors, because the last time we had refueling in 2017, one issue is that the tank was still really big. So what you basically did was say, oh yeah, the options last 18 laps, so I'm going to put in 20 laps of fuel, and those 2 extra laps will still be quicker than having filled up. So basically an overcut is the king. But we will basically be limiting the tank in such a way to mimic that sort of stuff as well. And also the way that the tires work will be a lot less about going 2 seconds lap slower to save. So yeah, it's going to be a lot more about aggressive strategies and not necessarily aggressive driving, because there will still be a limit of over driving, but there isn't going to be so much mass conservation, basically. So no like fuel saving, no tire saving, being a bit more aggressive, being a bit more, drivers having to be a bit more proactive about trying to increase their position.
So that leads actually perfectly from to a question in the chat here from Joao. He says harder tires too. So as far as I do understand, we do not have the 3 kind of compounds from F1 or F1 kind of style. So as you say, you don't want to have boring races, you want to see proper racing. So can we expect this to be like an actual 80-minute sprint race?
Obviously we will have to see exactly how it works out and how especially the best teams work out what is going to be the best strategy. By harder tires, if you mean about the selection, so there will simply be a soft and a hard tire. And they will work to balance them in such a way, and therefore the tire rule will be forcing you to use either one or multiple sets of the hard tires. So yeah, obviously these things all need to be balanced out, and that is why we will have the preseason tests as we get into the end of January and February. We'll be having preseason tests, so I do encourage anyone wanting to participate this season to come along, and then obviously we'll see how the car works and how the fuel works, how tires work, etc. Yanez also asked, is a one-stop strategy not possible? So no. that is, so the tank will be smaller than that is the plan. So smaller than half, so you won't be able to do a one-stop. And also, Jukapeka said, obviously removing DRS can cause trains itself, but the main issue or the main reason is, say, trying to think of an example. So think of Japan, the final chicane, you then have the really long, fast right-hander out onto the main straight, easy flat out. And if you as the following driver get really close in the chicane, so you get your DRS, but then you make a mistake, you've still got the DRS. So even if you drop to like 1.5 seconds because you make the mistake, you can then still catch back up, for instance. Whereas if you, as a following driver, make a mistake, but you lose the slipstream, then you've lost the slipstream. You still don't then have the DRS. So it makes it a lot harder just to sit behind someone by choice. And also we will obviously make it in a way that you will still be able to overtake. It's just you have to be actively quicker, and you have to actively be trying to overtake to actually get the slipstream required. So again, that needs to be balanced correctly, so that is not too hard or too easy. But yeah, the way DRS is, you could be like 0.9 behind someone and then get the DRS, and then you get back to 0.6, 0.5, and then you lose a bit along the lap again, and then you get DRS. So it sort of keeps on pulling you back, whereas you won't have this. If you're slower, you'll simply be slower. So therefore, the trains, in theory, should not be so common. Again, we have to see how the one works out, but that is the theory behind it.
When will you expect the first test race to happen?
So even as early as next week, so the 17th, is penciled in. Not announced, but penciled in, as a little spoiler there for those watching. So yeah, again, we'll see how it goes with where the mod is sitting, but it will be on, unless we need to do more, it will be on Sunday evenings. So like the 17th, 24th, 31st, etc. But yeah, even as early as the 17th is possible.
Thank you very much so far, Cameron. And you guys, please keep the question incoming. I will forward them as another question we can see. And that will be a quite interesting one. Is real weather or rain being reintroduced into FSR for 2021?
Not for the foreseeable future. Obviously, there are so the main issue why I got removed a couple of years ago is because the main plugin that we used or the API for the data got disbanded, and there are other data streams available, but they don't update as frequently, for instance. And it's also, as much as it's cool and it adds difference to the race, rain races aren't good, especially from like a broadcast perspective. As much as it is cool, especially the way that rFactor 2 simulates the rain, it doesn't create the best. Again, some drivers probably do find it fun, but the actual sort of racing and how it changes the race is not good. If it rains fully straight away and then it just stays wet for the rest of the race, it generally creates a difficult, boring race, because there'll always be people who either had a wet setup or they just are confident, and then the gaps just spread out so much. Then if it starts to dry, you can't actually overtake. So say someone does a bold strategy and they go on the inters or they go on the slicks early, they then can't overtake, because if they go even a millimeter off the racing line, they have no grip and they just slide and crash. And again, as much as that might be cool from a driving perspective, being on that limit, it generally doesn't make a good race. A good example to go back and watch would be Spa 2016 with Quickel versus Mohammed Patel, I believe it is. And they just couldn't overtake. coming up the Kemmel Straight, huge slipstream, you'd pull out, but then you wouldn't be able to obviously overtake and then get back in onto the racing line. So if you're braking on the wet stuff, it's just impossible. So yeah, for now, with the way the rain is in rFactor 2 and with the plugins that I know of, yeah, we won't be using it for the foreseeable future. But I'm never ruling out. As if we can make it work, then I'm open to that.
Too bad news, actually. If I listen to you and it's just like, I do understand your approach, where you're coming from, but then you said that rain is gonna be bad for broadcast point of view. I remember myself every time F1 is under rain, I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna be a great race. And Turkey proved us the point. And Nürburgring was sort of fun with the rain around on Friday all day. So therefore, I kinda agree and disagree, but I think
yeah, it's not an easy decision.
No, I think the point that you're raising at is that especially what is different from real life, apart from the physical aspect that the car's starting to perform differently, is the fact how and I think you pretty much nailed it, is the fact how rFactor 2 handles the rain. As soon as it stops raining, like the dry line is getting significantly faster. And we have seen in Turkey where you could still brake on the more wet line and somehow make it work. But as you say, in rFactor 2, you have zero chance.
Yeah, it's literally the easiest way of explaining it is on the wet line. It's literally just less grip, and the real road, which most people know, which is where the racing line gets more grip, and it actually physically gets darker on the track as well. That is basically how obviously it works out the dry as well. So it literally goes dry the exact 2 meter wide racing line that pretty much everyone sticks to, because in general the racing line is pretty similar, and maybe in some corners or whatever it will go a little bit wider, and over time it will get bigger and bigger, but it's very, very slow. And in a sprint race, which even the World Championship race being like an hour and 20 minutes or whatever, it's still a sprint race. And in that time period, you can't get the change. Now, if you increase the real road multiplier, then you can speed that up a little bit, but it's still not really enough. So yes, it would be fun. Yes, we will assess the situation every season in the future as well, or even for like the off-season series that we do as well. But as it stands right now, it doesn't really look like the best option. So we're just, yeah, I guess keeping it safe is the best way of describing it. And we're trying to innovate in other areas to make the racing interesting. Yeah.
So, since you are the official rFactor 2 Open Wheeler Championship, that means you have an official link to rFactor 2 and Studio 397. Obviously, also kind of explains the calendar, as this has been probably the most raceable tracks in rFactor 2 that are at the same time official content.
Yeah.
With FSR having the official link to rFactor 2, how is the possibility you rate that maybe one of your mods become an official content on rFactor 2? Is that something you guys are talking about, or in general, what is, as a point of view from you as an FSR president, what is the benefit being so namely and image-wise closely linked to Studio 397 and rFactor 2?
Yes, firstly with the mods choice, obviously, yeah, being officially partnered with them, we have to use all the official tracks, and we also have to use, well, publicly speaking, we have to use the like official names and everything, such as you see, round 7 is Azure. But at the end of the day, it's just a name. It doesn't really matter. It's still the same track. It's still scanned. it's cool. Yes, again, there are DLC tracks and things like that, but after a couple of years, the general population of rFactor 2 are going to have all the DLCs anyway, so I don't really see that as being an issue. But are mods becoming like official mods? I guess there is potential for that to happen, but there's always positives and negatives of those sorts of things. But I mean, I would never say no to something, or like a definite no to something like that. We'd always have to assess the situation, and then coming to your point about what does it bring? Well, first of all, yes, it limits us a little bit on the track choice, but I'm personally really happy with the 12 race calendar we have now. Secondly, it gives us access, or more access, I should say, to some of the personnel, and just simply speaking with them, advice, contacts, slightly earlier information, all this sort of stuff. And the name itself, the fact that they trust us and that they see us as an outlet that they want to be represented with, is very good. And just in general, it's such a good opportunity to be partnered with the official studio of the game that we're making, and I'm really glad that we've got there. And obviously that has also led to other contacts and potential partners and this sort of stuff as well. So there's a lot more that it brings, not just from the actual the racing side of it, but also things that happen off track. So yeah, there's loads of positives for it. Of course, there are certain negatives, such as being restricted to the tracks that are in the game. There are certain tracks on the official F1 calendar that maybe we'd like to add but aren't available in the game. However, the 12 races that we've got are very good indeed. And yes, there may be one or two there that people are going to say, oh, it's difficult to overtake or whatever, or but there's always tracks like that. I mean, in 2019, for instance, we had certain tracks such as Hungary, or whatever, Paul Ricard and stuff like that. And also those mods weren't even anywhere as near good quality as especially some of these newer DLC tracks that we're using. So yeah, there are positives and benefits to it, but overall we see that there are more positives, and it's good that they being 397 like us and are happy to be representing us, or us representing them, I mean. So yeah, we'll just see how it progresses in the future as well.
That's very nice partnership indeed, and I can understand your point as being the FSR president to high value this cooperation. Coming back to our overall topic a bit, rFactor 2 competition system. Now, they are trying to put the GT Challenge and the GT Pro and their official championships into that competition system. Do you have any evidence, or do you have any idea whether, let's say, FSR or maybe VEC, or let's talk about FSR maybe only, is being somewhat considered to be used or to be displayed or to somehow being controlled via that competition system? Is that something you guys have talked about? Is that something that may happen?
I mean, obviously, we've floated ideas about, and from what it sounds like, that's not their main focus right now. But as we said, the competition system is in beta, so we'll have to see exactly how that one works out. But I can definitely see a very good potential for things like this to happen, because not only does it benefit the league, but it benefits the general rFactor 2 community and rFactor 2 themselves directly, because one of the main issues at the moment is a lot of these so-called esports events are ran by the few people within 397, but we have a whole team of experienced, knowledgeable people at FSR who can run, in our opinion, some of the best rFactor 2 events that there are. And the fact that we are then able also to go out and get our own partners and sponsors and this sort of stuff, it just adds a whole extra dynamic to the rFactor 2 community. So I can definitely see that as a benefit and a potential for both the league itself and rFactor 2 in the future. But obviously right now they need to get these things sorted with, for instance, GT Pro, GT Challenge, the BMW M2 series, those sorts of things, the current official competitions. And then once they've sorted out, I don't see why that couldn't be a possibility in the future. But again, we just need to see how that one works out.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
time will tell.
At this stage, is probably something you keep in mind and see when the cooperation goes on and on and on, whether you can introduce that as a feature or like become a side part of the actual official competition system. If they put something out into, some leagues have been held in iRacing, let's say, also in a league system that is still being sort of operated via the iRacing system itself, yet not belongs to the official iRacing competition system.
Yeah, I think things sort of along those lines would be very beneficial for all parties involved, really. And the main reason why I think it's going to do well, or has potential to do well, is because your average user who just wants to know when there are races. Because one of the issues with rFactor in the previous years is the only way of doing races is by finding a league. Yes. But there's nowhere that tells you where to find the league. You just have to go and search. But now we have this opportunity to have these leagues physically in the game. It just completely changes the way that drivers are going to be, especially the new drivers to rFactor 2, are going to be learning the processes. Because when you go and click on the competition system, and obviously, yes, you're going to have your GTE, your Tatus, your GT Pro, etc. But then say you had VEC, FSR, etc. You're like, oh, what's this? And then you realize, oh, yeah, there's a really high level or well organized, I should say, open wheel championship. And, has all these drivers. You can see the list. You can see when the races are. That has such big potential for your average user in rFactor 2. And I think that's really the way it's gonna end up going, because that is how you're going to expand rFactor 2, is by making it easier for the player base to get into races. So if physically within the UI you can see all these leagues, that's just gonna completely change the way. And especially actually if obviously the Formula Simracing World Championship, we still value ourselves as being, one of, if not the highest level open wheel competition on rFactor 2, not just in terms of necessarily the standard and quality, but also the prestige that comes with it as well. So if you had some sort of ladder system potentially as well, where you have, not just FSR, but other leagues that are out there, and then with VEC, and then there's a million endurance leagues out there. So if you had almost like a pyramid system or a ladder system where you could see who the better driver, who the better competitions are, and this sort of stuff, that can just blow up the rFactor 2 community. And I'm really looking forward to how that's going to work, because it's got such good potential.
Yeah, I mean, we're all excited. I basically can't wait for it to get an official thing. And I know that Marcelo Alfamans is here in the chat also watching. He kindly said to you can now remove Belgium and put Spa-Francorchamps since it's official.
We put the country name, or the GP name, I should say, as the title here. But,
apart from the obvious one, yeah.
well, yeah. I mean, that's what we have to call it. But it's the same track, so I don't mind having to put a different name.
Yes, indeed. So let's come back a little bit more to the day-to-day business of FSR. James Racing had another question where he was asking, is a non-FSR member able to join a practice server, a free practice server during the week?
Yes. So the FSR practice server is up at the moment, albeit with the 2020 mod still, because obviously 21's not released. So yeah, there is an open FSR. Literally just go on to the server list, type in FSR, 3 letters, and it will come up. It's generally called like FSR open or FSR practice. And yeah, it's open. Go on there. We would, when the season gets started, we will have the FSR like track upgrades and car upgrades and this sort of stuff, but that will be available on the workshop item that will be out there once the season gets going. So you will have to be subscribed to that. But apart from that, yeah, it's free as long as you have that track and that car. Yeah, go for it. get racing. We do have live timing via RaceView, so raceview.com. Yeah, go and have a look. You can see where your times are. Also, obviously, joining the FSR forums during the season as well. You can find out how to sign up. You can find out more discussion of the car, of the tracks, the race threads, and at the top of the forums is links to Discord, live timing, results pages, etc.
So that is the information for everyone interested for Formula Sim racing in the future. I don't know if we have anything to add here. I mean, we do have a 12 race calendar. It ends at the mid of August, which obviously features the question, what next? What is still planned for 2021?
Well, so obviously in 2020, we had the awesome opportunity to partner with the race to do the race Indy Pro Championship, which was amazing to be a part of. Really good fun. So I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up doing something. It obviously depends on the calendar dates as well, because we pretty much race on every Sunday that F1 isn't. So yeah, we'll see the dates. We do have some plans, and yeah, we'll see we'll see how they come through. Obviously being FSR president, I've always got a million ideas going through my brain. And yeah, just seeing the potential of different areas. So there's certainly going to be things happening. We're not just going to finish on the 22nd of August and that be it. I'm sure we'll have some sort of series in the autumn like we did this year. What that is right now, I can't tell you. But also right now, full focus is on 2021, getting the car sorted, getting the rules sorted, getting sign-up sorted. Yeah, that's all of the that's all of the work. It is quite busy, but that is why I'm voted in as president of FSR.
That's definitely good news. The fact you spoke about the race Indy Pro, is the race also on board for the 2021 main season? And for potential sponsorships, is there anything, or is there still free spots on the media board for those?
Well, so as you can see by, for instance, the calendar, there are no logos on it yet, obviously, apart from rFactor 2 Studio 397. So obviously, as always, we're talking to various parties, and those things will get confirmed in due course. But obviously, these things take weeks, if not months, of negotiating and back-to-back talking and this sort of stuff. So, yeah, as I said earlier in the broadcast, we're still 2 months away. So, yeah, still plenty can happen. Obviously, we've had quite a long off season because we finished back in August as well in 2020. So I know people have been waiting, but yeah, we're hoping and we're looking to get a very, very well organized, a very well run championship, and exploring the possibilities of rFactor 2 and what we can do with the mod and the tracks.
That will be definitely interesting to see out in the future. We have another question from Claudio. What level is the sponsorships at, and is it possible to get some info on that? And so, is there a mail address he could send his mail in?
Well, I mean, yeah, if you mean yourself wanting to sponsor, then hit either me or Felix up, either Discord, FSR forums, etc. With the inbox function, you can get in contact with us, or like via our Facebook page. Anything. But in terms of the people, I guess that we're speaking to, then, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say specifically, who or what or whatever, but I guess you could say we are speaking to people regarding like, title sponsorships or just like little logo sponsorships, ad sponsorships, all that sort of stuff. Like all those sort of levels, there is always possibility for them within FSR. So yeah, just need to see what we can confirm. And yeah, I'm just so excited to get going with San Marino on the 7th of March, to be honest. Imola, not gonna lie, one of my favorite tracks. So really glad that we got it in rFactor 2 as the season opener as well. So it should be good fun. So
that is definitely interesting news, interesting stuff we were talking about right here today. So the FSR competition system, yeah. That's quite getting late, right? The rFactor 2 competition system, indeed, and the FSR 2021 season. So if you guys have further questions, if you're watching this as a video on demand later on, feel free to put down the questions down in the comment area below. We will both have a look on the video from time to time and answer all your questions. Maybe a final question, since it may be interesting for the competition on FSR itself. So mod database, I saw we won't have pre-qualifying anymore. So how will the people competing in the Pro and ACA championships will be chosen?
So at the moment there is a team application system. The final, so what will effectively happen is we will then read all of the applications, and I haven't them all in a big list just yet because I'm waiting for them to come in, but I assume there's probably going to be more teams than spaces, so therefore we are going to have to choose. Obviously that depends on their commitment in previous years. Have they just shown up for the first 2 races and then disappeared? Obviously the drivers that they have as well. We do have the license system, so therefore drivers are effectively forced into a different division depending on their ability. And we will, I don't want to say it just yet, but we do have plans, because obviously that effectively limits the numbers. So we do have plans, but we're just finalizing them. But there will be, this kind of gives it away, but there will be a way for people to race who aren't in one of those teams, if that makes sense. So we're not making it exclusive as such. There will be plenty of open spaces for people who want to race, and we are open to obviously drivers of all abilities. Obviously we are more of a professional league, so we obviously go towards the high level drivers as such, but we obviously want to stay open to the new guys coming through, and we want to help them work their way up the driver license system. So there will be opportunities for that, so don't worry for those guys. And obviously Ernest saying, will FSR ever see upgrades? If you mean regarding car performance throughout the season, not this year. Maybe in the future in a different series or whatever. Who knows? It's a big job to balance that and get it working correctly. And also that's not really the philosophy of what FSR is. FSR is all about finding the best driver, and obviously being in a better team helps that, but it's all about level playing field, drivers going out and competing against themselves for the pride and the prestige that comes with being an FSR world champion.
Yeah, so that, I think, sums it up. That is all questions answered. The only thing I can tell you right now, we are desperately waiting on Studio 397 to release the new blog post about the competition system. So if you do have any questions or want to get more information about the competition system that what you have seen tonight on the SimPub, you will press and hammer the F5 button of the official Studio 397.com rFactor webpage, because I know that Marcel Offermans is about to release another blog post about the competition system, dedicated to the competition system. So that is the latest news from rFactor 2. The servers will go up again in little less than 3.5 hours with the Tattoos Winter Series. I'm gonna be back racing on that tomorrow, maybe tonight, I don't know yet.
Yeah, let's stay up late, Michi. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's schedule 15 streams and do every race in the next 3 days. No,
Indeed.
kidding. That won't happen. But yeah, you guys can be sure that you see more competition system racing coming up in the GTE at Virginia, in the Tattoos at Loch Drimmen. For both cars, I have prepared setup guides. Well, I did that live already, but I'm gonna upload the dedicated videos to each other, including the download button for the setups himself, in the next couple of days. And yeah, other than that, we hope rFactor 2's competition system getting more and more features and being improved fairly soon. That they are working on it is I mean, that's no known mystery. They are pushing it very hard, and the only thing I can encourage you guys is keep grinding it, keep hammering it, keep driving, keep racing, keep giving data to rFactor 2, to Studio 397, so that beyond the blog post that is about to come up, let me see. Marcel Offermans, the blog post will be out in a few more hours, along with a build update for some fixes, including for virtual reality. So you got your news right there. Tomorrow morning, at the very latest, if you living in Europa, you got your newspaper article right there on the breakfast desk, and we'll enjoy news about the new rFactor 2 build, including some fixes and a blog post dedicated to the competition system. Cameron, you got anything you want to say in your closing for tonight?
Well, so first of all, for Formula Simracing, do go check out the FSR forums, forums.formula-simracing.net. And also subscribe to Hud Rod Automotive, my automotive YouTube channel, car builds, car reviews, shenanigans, all that good jazz. And obviously, subscribe to Michi Sim Racing as well, one of the best content there is for the rFactor 2 competition system at the moment.
So, ultimate chance to get your that thing. Anyway, guys, that's gonna do it for today. That's gonna do it for this episode of the SimPub. My name is Michi Hoyer. There is Cameron Rodger. Guys, we see each other on the next episode of the SimPub. See you there, and goodbye.
Yeah, fortunately it didn't. It was my sister. She just came in, but fortunately the door was perfectly positioned. Yeah, that's quite good fun. Oh. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Are you still live, by the way? Okay.